I had been working at Parallax Tech in Seattle for 8 years, steadily climbing the ranks as a software developer. When Jason joined our team, I took him under my wing, mentoring him like the brother I never had. The senior architect position opening up was my chance to finally reach the pinnacle of my career, until I noticed Jason getting suspiciously close to our director. Something felt off, but I never imagined just how deeply betrayal could cut. Before I tell you how my best friend stabbed me in the back, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever trusted someone who did not deserve it. The first time I met Jason Adams was during his orientation 5 years ago. I still remember the way he confidently strode into our open office space designer messenger bag, slung over his shoulder firm handshake, ready for everyone he met. He was everything I was not, Ivy League educated, naturally charismatic, and from a background of privilege that showed in his effortless confidence. Caden Marshall. I introduced myself, offering my hand. Lead developer on the security team. Jason Adams. Excited to be working with you, he replied with a grin that seemed genuine. My path to Parallax had been significantly different. Growing up in a blue-collar family in Lansing, Michigan, my parents could never afford to send me to college. I learned coding through public library books and free online courses, working night shifts at a warehouse to pay for community college classes. Every line of code I wrote felt like another small victory against the odds stacked against me. Would you mind showing me around the code base? Jason asked on his second day, pulling up a chair to my desk. The architecture here is more complex than what I worked with in grad school. Something about his humility, despite his Stanford degree, made me like him immediately. Over the next few weeks, our friendship developed naturally. We started having lunch together in the company cafeteria, where I would explain the practical aspects of our systems that his theoretical education had not covered. See, the problem with what they teach in school, I explained between bites of my sandwich, is that real-world systems are messy. Documentation is outdated. Legacy code is everywhere, and you have to make things work without breaking what came before. Jason nodded, taking notes on his phone. That makes sense. We only worked with pristine systems, built specifically for educational purposes. Our after-work beer sessions at the Rusty Nail, a dive bar 2 blocks from the office, soon became a weekly tradition. I would help Jason debug particularly tricky problems, and he would share stories about his college days. Despite our different backgrounds, we found common ground in our passion for elegant code and efficient solutions. You know, Caden, Jason said one night after his 3rd month at Parallax, I have learned more from you than I did in 2 years of graduate courses. I brushed off the compliment with a laugh. You just needed someone to translate all that fancy theory into actual useful skills. But privately, I took pride in mentoring him. I saw potential in Jason, a quickness to learn, a drive to improve, qualities I recognized in myself. The mentoring continued as months turned into years. I helped Jason navigate office politics, advised him on which projects would advance his career, and spent countless weekend sessions teaching him the security protocols I had helped design. In return, Jason brought energy and fresh perspectives to our team, becoming well-liked among our colleagues. Then came the announcement that changed everything. Harold Winters, the current senior architect, was retiring in 6 months. The position would be opening up and internal candidates would be considered first. Senior architect, the position I had dreamed about since joining Parallax. The role would come with a substantial salary increase, authority over technical decisions, and finally, validation. Validation that a self-taught programmer from a working-class background could reach the highest technical position in a prestigious tech company. That night I could barely contain my excitement as I told my girlfriend Mia about the opportunity over dinner at our small apartment. This is it, Mia, I said, gesturing with my fork. Everything I have been working toward. If I get this position, it proves that my path was legitimate, that you do not need an expensive degree to be taken seriously in this industry. Mia reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Her dark eyes were warm with pride. You are going to get it, Caden. No one knows those systems better than you do. No one has put in the time and dedication that you have. I spent the next morning outlining my preparation plan. Additional courses on system architecture certifications I would need to complete, and a proposal for a new security protocol that would showcase my abilities. When Jason stopped by my desk around lunch, I shared the news with him. "That is amazing, Caden. You would be perfect for that role," he said, giving me a friendly punch on the shoulder. "You practically built half the systems here anyway." "Thanks, man. It is going to be a lot of work to prepare, but this is my shot." Jason nodded, then hesitated before asking, "Do you think, would you mind if I also work toward a promotion? Not senior architect, of course, but maybe team lead." "Absolutely," I responded without hesitation. "I would be happy to help you prepare for that. Could you show me what you are learning? Maybe we could study together sometimes." Looking back now, I should have seen it for what it was, but at the time all I saw was a friend looking to advance his career alongside mine. So, I agreed, and our mentoring sessions expanded to include my preparation materials for the senior architect position. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, after most of the office had emptied out, Jason would pull his chair up to my desk, and I would share everything I knew. From complex architectural patterns to the history of system decisions that had shaped our current infrastructure, nothing was off limits. "I owe you one man." "Seriously," Jason said after a particularly late-night session where I had walked him through the intricacies of our authentication system. "No problem. You would do the same for me," I replied. If only I had known how wrong I was. The first subtle change in Jason happened about 3 months before the promotion decision was due. I was grabbing coffee from the break room when I noticed Jason and Thomas Reed, our department director, heading out for lunch together. Thomas was a key decision-maker for the senior architect position, so seeing them together caught my attention. Just networking, I told myself, stirring sugar into my coffee. Everyone does it. But one lunch turned into 2 then weekly meetings. I soon noticed closed-door sessions between them, with Jason emerging looking pleased with himself. When I asked him about it casually, he shrugged it off. "Just getting some advice on career development," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. Around the same time, I was leading a major project, developing a new security protocol that would protect our client data more effectively while reducing authentication time. This project was worth millions to the company, potentially saving them from the kind of breaches that had damaged our competitors. I was putting everything I had into it, seeing it as my ticket to the senior architect position. True to form, I shared my strategies with Jason. During our evening sessions, I would sketch out authentication flows on whiteboards, explain my reasoning, and show him the elegant solutions I had developed over weeks of careful thinking. Jason took extensive notes, asking intelligent questions that sometimes helped me refine my ideas further. Then came the first clear warning sign. During a team meeting where I was scheduled to present my progress on the security protocol, Jason spoke up just before I could begin. "I have been thinking about our authentication challenges," he said, turning to Thomas. "What if we implemented a multi-layered approach that separates user verification from system access permissions?" My blood ran cold. That was exactly the approach I had outlined to him 2 days earlier, down to the terminology I had used. The worst part was that he presented it as if it had just occurred to him, making no mention of our discussions. "That is actually similar to what I was about to present," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Great minds think alike," Jason replied with a smile that did not reach his eyes. After the meeting, I pulled him aside in the hallway. "That was my idea," I said directly. "The one I walked you through on Tuesday." Jason had the decency to look momentarily uncomfortable. "Oh, was it? Sorry about that. I thought it was something we had discussed as a team earlier. Communication mix-up." I wanted to believe him. After all, we had worked closely for years, and ideas sometimes blended together when you collaborated often. But something in his too casual apology felt wrong. Over the next few weeks, I began noticing other changes. Jason started using presentation techniques I had developed, of the way I structured technical explanations to make them accessible to non-technical team members, my habit of using real-world analogies to illustrate complex concepts. He was becoming a carbon copy of my professional style, but with the added advantage of his natural charisma. One evening, while working late, I walked past his desk and saw him using my custom code templates, frameworks I had developed to speed up my workflow. He quickly minimized the window when he noticed me. Those were my templates, I said, stopping at his desk. Oh yeah. Hope you do not mind. They are really efficient, and I figured since we are on the same team. Our lunches together became less frequent, with Jason always having some excuse, meeting with marketing or catching up on documentation. Then one day, passing by a conference room, I overheard his voice through the partially open door. Caden has a solid foundation, but his approach is becoming outdated. We need someone with vision for where technology is heading, not just expertise in legacy systems. I froze in the hallway, unable to believe what I was hearing. Jason was talking to Thomas, essentially dismissing my 8 years of experience as outdated. The betrayal stung like a physical blow. Later that day, I confronted him in the break room while he was making coffee. I heard what you said to Thomas, I said, keeping my voice low so others would not hear. Jason's face showed momentary alarm before settling into an apologetic expression. You misunderstood, Caden. I was talking about our overall approach as a department, not you specifically. That is not how it sounded. Look, I am sorry if it came across that way, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder that I had to resist, shrugging off. You know I value everything you have taught me. When I mentioned my concerns to Mia that night, she suggested I might be overreacting. He is your friend, Caden, she said as we washed dishes side by side. Maybe give him the benefit of the doubt. Promotion competitions can make everyone a little paranoid. But my suspicions were confirmed the next day when I checked the system logs for my project files and discovered they had been accessed multiple times from Jason's account over the past month. He was not just taking inspiration from my ideas, he was systematically studying my work. During meetings, Jason began subtly contradicting my points, always in a way that made him appear more forward-thinking. While Caden's approach would work, we could also consider a cloud-native solution that would scale better. Long-term, he would say, or, that is one way to handle it, though. Modern frameworks might offer more flexibility. Each night, I found myself lying awake, replaying our 5-year friendship, and seeing warning signs I had missed. The excessive note-taking during our mentoring sessions. The questions that seemed designed to extract my thought processes rather than understand concepts. The way he had studied my career path and was now following it exactly, but at an accelerated pace. My colleague Darius, a quiet but observant database administrator, pulled me aside after a particularly frustrating meeting where Jason had once again repackaged my ideas. You know he has been taking credit for your team's accomplishments, right? Darius asked, voice low. Last week he told Thomas that the database optimization was his idea when I know for a fact that you led that initiative. A week later I learned that Jason had been invited to present our security protocol progress to the board, an opportunity I, as project lead, should have been given. When I tried to discuss my concerns with Samantha from HR, she brushed them off as healthy competition and suggested I focus on showcasing my own value. As Jason's influence grew, I found myself increasingly isolated. Colleagues who once came to me for technical guidance now directed their questions to him. In meetings, my points were overlooked while his were noted and discussed. The team dynamic had shifted, and I was being edged out of the center by someone I had helped place there. 1 week before the promotion decision was due to be announced, I stayed late to finalize my presentation for a last interview with the executive team. The office was nearly empty when I realized I needed to reference some documentation Jason had been working on. Since his computer was still logged in, I navigated to his document folder to find the file. What I found instead made my stomach drop. There, organized in neat folders, were copies of my presentation drafts, my security protocol documentation, and detailed notes on my architectural decisions, all with Jason's name on them. He had not just been inspired by my work, he had been systematically stealing it. I was making copies of the evidence when Jason returned from a meeting. "What are you doing at my computer?" he demanded, his friendly facade instantly dropping. Finding out the truth, I replied, holding up a USB drive. "These are my files, my ideas, my work, all with your name on them." For a moment, Jason seemed caught off guard. Then, surprisingly, his expression relaxed into something I had never seen before, cold calculation, without the warmth that had characterized our friendship. "Did you really think someone like you would get that position over someone like me?" he asked, his voice quiet but cutting. "I needed your knowledge now. I do not need you." The bluntness of his betrayal left me speechless. "Let me spell it out for you," Jason continued, leaning against his desk with casual confidence. "I have an Ivy League degree, family connections, and the kind of background people in the executive suite relate to. You are a community college dropout from Michigan with working-class roots. The only advantage you had was experience and technical knowledge, and now I have that too. You stole my work," I managed to say, anger, finally breaking through my shock. "I leveraged available resources," he corrected with a smirk. "That is what successful people do, Caden. They recognize opportunities and seize them. You should have protected your ideas better. We were friends. I trusted you." Jason actually laughed at that. "That was your first mistake. This is business, not a friendship circle. Thomas already thinks the security protocol was my concept. The board is impressed with my vision for the architecture. It is too late." I left the building in a daze, sitting in my car in the parking garage for nearly an hour, trying to process what had happened. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that it seemed unreal. I had given Jason everything: my knowledge, my trust, my friendship, and he had been playing me the entire time. The next day I discovered that Jason had submitted my security protocol blueprint as his own work for the senior architect application. The document was identical to mine except for the name at the top and a few minor wording changes. I immediately requested a meeting with Thomas, hoping that laying out the truth would make a difference. But Thomas's response made it clear that Jason had been laying groundwork for months. "These accusations are serious," Caden Thomas said, frowning. "But Jason has kept me informed of his contributions all along. He mentioned you might feel threatened by his rapid growth at the company. He stole my work." I insisted, pushing copies of both documents across the desk. "Look at these. They are identical." Thomas glanced at them briefly. "Collaboration often results in similar approaches. Jason has demonstrated exceptional understanding of our systems in our private discussions. His vision for the department aligns with where we need to go." Walking back to my desk, I noticed several colleagues who had been on my team now clustered around Jason, looking at his screen as he explained something. These were people I had trained whose careers I had helped shape, now looking to Jason for leadership. Later that afternoon, passing by the conference room, I overheard Thomas telling another director Jason is the front-runner for the senior architect position. Young, brilliant, with the perfect blend of technical skills and leadership presence. That night I told Mia everything, my voice breaking as I recounted Jason's cold dismissal of our friendship. "This is not over," she said firmly, her eyes flashing with anger on my behalf. "You built this from nothing, Caden. Do not let him take it." "What is the point?" I asked, slumped on our couch. Thomas has already made up his mind. The board is impressed with Jason. Everything I have worked for is gone. "That is not the Caden I know," Mia challenged. "The Caden I know fought his way up from nothing. He did not give up when he could not afford college or when companies rejected him for not having a degree. He found another way." I spent that night staring at the ceiling, cycling through anger, betrayal, and despair. Every career accomplishment now felt tainted by Jason's theft. Every late night I had spent working seemed wasted. For the first time since I was a teenager, I questioned whether I was good enough, whether my non-traditional path had been a mistake all along. At 3 a.m, exhausted but unable to sleep, a realization slowly formed. Jason had stolen my ideas, but he did not understand them fully. He had memorized my words, but lacked the deep comprehension that came from years of hands-on experience. There had to be a way to expose that. By morning, my despair had transformed into determination. I would not quit or accept defeat. Instead, I would fight back strategically, using the one advantage Jason could never steal: my authentic understanding of the systems I had helped build. First, I needed evidence. I spent the entire weekend meticulously documenting my work with timestamps and proof of original authorship. I retrieved old emails where I had discussed early versions of my ideas. I recovered backup files showing my development process over months. I pulled commit histories from our code repositories, showing my contributions dating back years. On Monday, I approached Darius explaining my situation and asking for his help. "I noticed something was off," Darius said, nodding. What do you need from me? Just verification. If I show you both sets of documents, can you confirm which came first? Darius agreed without hesitation. His position as database administrator gave him access to file metadata that could prove my case. As I continued gathering evidence, I discovered something critical. In his haste to claim my work, Jason had misunderstood a fundamental aspect of my security protocol. His implementation contained a serious flaw that could potentially create vulnerabilities rather than fixing them. He had copied my diagrams and explanations, but had missed the subtle logic that made the system work. Armed with comprehensive documentation, I bypassed Thomas and requested a meeting with Eliza Chen, a board member I had helped years ago with a technical problem on a critical deadline. She owed me no favors, but I hoped she would at least give me a fair hearing. "You have 15 minutes, she said when I entered her office on Wednesday morning. "I understand you have concerns about the senior architect selection process." Rather than making emotional accusations, I presented my case methodically. First, the timeline of my work development with verified timestamps. Then Jason's documents showing identical content submitted later. Finally, a technical breakdown showing how his implementation revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of the concepts he claimed to have created. This flaw here, I explained, pointing to a specific section, shows that while he copied the documentation, he did not grasp the underlying principles. A true author would never make this mistake. Eliza studied the documents carefully. "This is concerning Caden. Why are you bringing this to me rather than to Thomas?" "Thomas has already sided with Jason. I believe he has been misled about Jason's capabilities and contributions." Eliza nodded slowly. "I will need to discuss this with the board and verify your claims independently. In the meantime, I would like you to prepare a technical demonstration that clearly illustrates your points." 2 days later, I found myself in the boardroom alongside Jason, who looked surprised and annoyed by my presence. Thomas sat stiffly at the end of the table, while Eliza and 4 other board members faced us. "We have concerns about the attribution of work on the security protocol project," Eliza began without preamble. "Both candidates have claimed primary authorship. So today, we would like each of you to walk us through the technical implementation and answer some questions." The color drained slightly from Jason's face. This was not a presentation he could prepare for by memorizing my notes. This would require deep understanding. "Jason, since you are the current frontrunner for the position, please begin by explaining the core authentication mechanism and how it interacts with the permission layers." Jason launched into a well-rehearsed explanation that sounded impressive on the surface. But when board members began asking specific technical questions, his responses became vague and theoretical. "Could you elaborate on how you addressed the race condition in the token verification process?" one board member asked. Jason hesitated, then offered a generic answer about asynchronous processing. When my turn came, I did not just explain the system. I demonstrated why each decision had been made, the trade-offs considered, and how it all connected to our existing infrastructure. When questioned about the race condition, I provided a detailed explanation of the specific solution I had implemented, drawing a diagram to illustrate the process flow. "There is one more thing," I said, pulling up side by side, code samples. This implementation in Jason's proposal contains a critical security flaw. It reverses the order of authentication and encryption, creating a vulnerability that would expose user credentials during the verification process. Jason attempted to dispute this, but his explanation only revealed his lack of understanding further. He could not explain technical details of his work because he had never truly understood it. As the meeting progressed, Jason became increasingly defensive, eventually trying to shift blame. "Caden has been undermining me ever since he realized I might get the promotion instead of him. This is sabotage, not collaboration." His accusation backfired when Darius, who had been invited to provide technical verification, presented the metadata evidence showing the chronology of document creation. 2 other developers from my team, hearing about the situation, had also come forward to confirm my leadership on projects Jason had claimed. By the end of the meeting, the truth was undeniable. Jason had systematically stolen my work and presented it as his own, all while undermining me to management. 1 week later, The company announced their decision. I would be promoted to senior architect while Jason was placed on probation, pending further review of his conduct. Thomas, looking deeply uncomfortable, delivered the news himself. "The board was impressed with your technical expertise and integrity," he said stiffly. "They feel you are the right person to lead our architecture team forward." I accepted the position with mixed emotions. The vindication was satisfying, but the experience had left wounds that would take time to heal. Trust in my colleagues had been damaged, and relationships needed to be rebuilt. In the weeks that followed, I worked to reconnect with team members who had been misled by Jason's manipulation. Some apologized for doubting me, while others were simply relieved that the tension in the department was resolving. Gradually, the team dynamic began to recover, though nothing would ever be quite the same. Jason avoided me, entirely maintaining that he had done nothing wrong. He spent his probation period attempting to build alliances with other directors, but his reputation had been irreparably damaged. 3 weeks into his probation, he resigned, rather than face the full ethics review. 6 months have passed since I stepped into the senior architect role. The security protocol has been successfully implemented, receiving praise from clients and industry analysts alike. My team has expanded, and I have been deliberate about building a culture of transparency and collaborative attribution. Last week I ran into Jason at a tech conference downtown. He is working for a competitor now in a position less senior than he had at Parallax. When he spotted me across the exhibition hall, he approached with the same charming smile I once trusted completely. "No hard feelings, right?" he said, extending his hand as if the betrayal had been a minor misunderstanding. "Business is business. I might have overstepped, but we both know that is how the game is played." I looked at his outstretched hand, then back at his face. "That is not a game I play, Jason. Never was." I walked away without shaking his hand, choosing dignity over either forgiveness or vengeance. Some bridges once burned should remain ashes. The experience changed me in ways I am still discovering. I am more cautious now about who I trust, with my ideas more careful about documenting my work, but I refuse to become cynical or withhold knowledge that could help others grow. The difference is that I now set clearer boundaries and watch more carefully for warning signs I once ignored. Mia has been my rock throughout this journey. "You won," she reminded me on the difficult days when betrayal still stung fresh. "Not just the position, but the moral victory. You stayed true to yourself." Perhaps the most unexpected outcome has been a deeper understanding of my own resilience. When everything I had worked for was threatened, I found strength I did not know I possessed. There is a freedom that comes after weathering betrayal, the knowledge that your worth is not defined by others' recognition or validation, but by your own integrity and perseverance. Now, when I mentor new team members, I do so with wiser boundaries, but still with genuine intent to help them succeed. The cycle of knowledge sharing continues, but with eyes wide open. What I have learned is that success earned will always be more valuable than success stolen. The former builds character and capability. The latter builds only the illusion of achievement. Jason may have taken my ideas, but he could never take the understanding that created them, or the resilience that defended them. Life will always have people who try to use your vulnerability against you, who see your openness as weakness. But closing yourself off entirely is surrendering to their worldview. The challenge is finding the balance, being generous without being naive, trusting without being blind. Has someone ever betrayed your trust in a way that fundamentally changed you? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember to share this video with someone who might be dealing with betrayal right now. Sometimes knowing we are not alone in our struggles makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, true strength is not in never falling, but in rising every time someone tries to knock you down.